Hi, my name is Jeet Thayil. This is Mridula Koshi. We are in Delhi on November the 30th, 2017, and we are going to ask and answer some questions sent to us by Scroll, the online journal of the arts.
Well, Jeet, thank you for having me over. And
Mridula, thank you for coming.
for surprising me with these questions. The first one is really short. The facts are known. I don't know what facts, but the facts are known. What is the role of imagination in your novel?
I think the facts are very easy to ascertain if you even were to Google it, because one of the characters in this book, his life kind of follows the arc of a historical person. Two historical people, Domrose and Francis Newton Sousa. But the facts are also the least interesting things about these characters. The facts are stepping stones. The facts are what you springboard off. And without imagination, there would be nothing. So, as with any novelist, characters really are composites. The final character has nothing to do with the facts, with the actual life story or the arc of the character on the historical character on whom it's based. The novelistic character is completely different and is absolutely to do with the imagination. And I think a novelist would not ask this question. So I know this is not from you, this is from Scroll.
So I read this in a very early iteration when you had that first manuscript, the one that preceded Narcopolis.
Yes.
The one that became Narcopolis
Yeah.
and now has become the Book of Chocolate Saints,
Yes.
because you had to split that manuscript.
Into three. This is the second.
This is the second, and there's one more coming.
I think so.
So do you think the role of imagination is the role of taking those facts and imagining yourself? Or are you imagining, is this Dom Moraes, but a better, more interesting Dom Moraes, or is this, how interesting is Jeet Thayil?
No, I think I have very little to do with this. It's absolutely Dom, but it's also a fictionalized version of a character based on Dom. And the character of Xavier in this book, if Dom were to read this book and look at this character, I think he would be amused at how little it has to do with him and how much it has to do with him as well, because it follows the trajectory of his life, and some of the biographical details are the same between Sousa and Moraes, and between Xavier and Sousa and Moraes. Some of the biographical details are the same, but the end result is completely different. And Dom would have got it, because he's written fiction and he's written poetry. He would absolutely get it, because no one who writes fiction has any doubt about how little fact plays in the end product, in the actual novel.
So I run a little library, and we put the poetry in the non-fiction section. Are we doing right or wrong?
No, you should be putting it in the fiction section.
Okay.
Poetry is fiction.
You did answer question number 6 from Scroll was, what would the real people in this novel have said on reading it? So
They would
Dom
laugh.
Moraes would have been amused.
He would have been amused, he would have smiled sardonically.
Okay. A question about craft. Poetry is crafted, written and rewritten till you get it right. What about the novel, this novel?
Exactly the same. You know that
Yes.
you were in Calcutta, which again refers to another one of their questions, and of course we're not going chronologically because we don't do that kind of thing. So I'm going to get to it now. You were in Calcutta when I thought I'd finished this book. when was that? In 2014?
It was 2014.
2014. So that was 3 years ago.
It was January 2014.
Exactly. January 2014 at a literary festival in Calcutta. I thought I was finished.
Yes.
And you were the first person I told.
Maybe, yeah.
You were.
Yes, oh, okay.
And we were on a panel and you announced it because it was the same day. You
That's
said
right.
it on the panel. And then, of course, I had no idea at the time that it was the first version.
Right.
And this book has very little to do with the book that I thought, I'd finished. And I rewrote it so many times. And the last 2 rewrites were purely to do with sentences, with language, getting the language right. And that, I think, is what took me the longest time. If I hadn't worked on a kind of a molecular level, this would have been done years ago.
Earlier we were talking about the book, the next one, and I was surprised because I write, my approach is a little different. How I approach it is a little different.
Yeah.
I'll write and then see where it takes me, but you're actually composing it in your head. It seemed to me when I was talking to you because...
You mean about the next book?
Yeah, the next book.
Not really. I have a rough idea, but I also know that when I begin to write it, it'll be something totally different. I've always thought of it in terms of that analogy about getting into a boat and setting off into the open sea and having no idea where you're eventually going to, on which beach or where your boat will eventually end up.
Are you surprised when you come to the end of the book?
I'm absolutely astonished by this one, actually. I had no idea that this is where it would end up.
What is it about the end that is surprising to you this time?
This time, the structure and how much ground, how many levels of ground this book covers. I mean, I always am depressed when I see reviews that talk about only the oral history of the Bombay poets of the 70s and 80s. That's one small part of this book. That is less than a third of this book. And I wonder, the reviewers who only talk about that, maybe they've skipped through the rest of it. Maybe they haven't read the book, but that's just really one small part of it. And there's also, there's other worlds, in the book.
Let's try and squeeze in one more question.
Sure. I think we have 2 minutes left.
Yeah. Well, it's something about what motivates your characters to do the things they do. They seem not to conform to the desires and difficulties that the rest of us experience in our lives. Really?
I'm very shocked to hear that. I thought they had exactly the desires that all of us face. And, if somebody actually felt that way, if someone at Scroll felt that way, I must have failed desperately. Anyway, on that depressing note, shall we end?
No, I want to ask you this, because this next question maybe will get a little more into the one I just asked. So what motivates you to write the novels you do? Does it have anything to do with the desires and difficulties the rest of us experience?
No, I write novels for the same reason I write poems, because otherwise I would be in therapy. Not that I'm not.
You still have to do that too.
Yeah, but much less, I think. Or otherwise I would be on medication, let's put it that way.
Okay, the last question here is, do you paint? What I actually want to ask is, do you cook?
I do cook.
I've eaten your food.
I do cook.
It's good.
I don't paint, but I draw.
Huh.
Yeah.
Who did the drawing on the wall there?
That's a kind of a communal effort.
Okay. I've been wanting to ask for a while. So, okay, I think we're done. And goodbye for the camera.
Goodbye, camera.
Goodbye.